All right. Welcome. My name is Patrick Kuruwine, and we have one of our pharmacy interns joining us today, Ziana Collins, who is a P2 at the University of Michigan's College of Pharmacy. Hello, Ziana.
Right.
Our guest today is Alvin Ong, a PharmD and a market access and health economics and outcomes research expert with a strong background in payer engagement, value and access strategy, and specialty drug launches. He's worked on both the clinical side as well as the commercial side of pharma, helping to bridge the gap between business goals and real world healthcare impact. Alvin is known for a strategic mindset, resilience, and ability to navigate complex healthcare landscapes to ensure patients get access to the treatments they need. Today, we'll dive into his insights on market access, payer strategy, and the future of healthcare economics. And currently, Alvin serves as the Director of Value and Access at Xenon Pharmaceuticals. Alvin, welcome.
Thanks, Patrick. Good to be here.
Absolutely. Pretty lengthy intro there. I wanted to make sure we hit all those points there.
Definitely longer of an intro than I would expect, but
Absolutely.
thank you.
Absolutely. So, we want to be respectful of your time. We'll go ahead and jump into the questions that we had for you. And again, the whole point, we just want to get a better sense as to what your perspective is within the pharmaceutical industry respective to your given role. So
Sure.
the first question we have, could you share more about your role and responsibilities within your organization?
Yeah, happy to. Xenon is a early stage biotech company, right? Focused on neurological disorders, epilepsy being top of mind right now. Part of my role as the value and access team, we sit under commercial and market access specifically. But when you think about where we are and thinking about how to bring a drug to market, a big part of my role is to try to develop some of the supporting evidence to support the clinical trial data that will be coming out, right? So when I think of payer engagement, payer discussions, and those kinds of things we need to communicate to the broader payer stakeholders, right? It really is supporting, not only the clinical trial data, but also understanding, helping them appreciate like the disease state, the unmet needs that remain in this space. Sometimes we get to the economic benefits or perhaps some of the comparisons because as we know, like head-to-head trials are hard to come by, right? And so there are other ways from a HEOR standpoint that can be done to make these indirect comparisons that are not just looking at label to label, but there are statistical analyses that can be done to try to make it more of an apples to apples comparison in the absence of some of those head-to-head trials availability. So I'd say that's a big part of my day-to-day right now.
Got it. And so when we think about some of the work you're doing with real world evidence, health economics outcomes and research, you're ultimately trying to pull data to ensure better formulary access for your medications within different payer networks.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to think about it, right? Like there's so much, when we think of, especially in pharmacy, like we think of clinical trials, rightfully so, as the gold standard, right, to get FDA approval. But there's a component after FDA approval that is, well, you want to get access. You want to make sure that patients have the ability and the access to get that medication, right? When prescribers have the opportunity to write for it upon approval. And so we just want to make sure that from a clinical and real world standpoint, like we provide the evidence package needed for payers to make the most informed decision and ensuring that access is as unrestricted as possible to those patients.
Got it. Awesome.
And then what would you see as the most pressing challenges facing your industry or organization today?
Yeah, I think a big one, and I think there's a buzzword nowadays, right, is the Inflation Reduction Act, right? Um, I think HUR is a huge deal globally, but it's starting to grow even more in the United States, right? Probably not to the same level as, when you think of some of the health technology assessment submissions you need to do with these different countries. But with the IRA, clearly there was a request for not only clinical trial data, but an increased appreciation for real world evidence, things to support the value package for your medicine as they go into negotiations, right? Beyond that, right, ICER has been around for quite a long time, and they've been kind of this independent watchdog, if you will, to ensure that the society and payers are getting the best bang for their buck when they think of the value that these medicines can bring. So for me, I do see like HUR as growing in the United States. I think it's going to continue to be that way as we think of value as being the top buzzword.
Thank you.
So Alvin, you dropped a couple of acronyms there for us, right? You dropped the um, Inflation Reduction Act as well as ICER. Can you share with our audience what the Inflation Reduction Act is as well as ICER?
Yeah, the Inflation Reduction Act, and mind you, this is
High
I'll give
level.
it a high level piece of it, right? But I think this past year was the first year they started allowing Medicare to negotiate for drug prices, right? And part of any negotiation is not only the price component, but there's also the component of the evidence that you're bringing to support the price you're offering, right? And I think from here on out, every year they're going to come out with a new list of new drugs that will start to be negotiated, right? And so that's an important piece because clinical trials only get you so far, important piece, but now it's what's the real world evidence to support some of these negotiations that come thereafter, right? So that's a big component for the industry today with regards to the Inflation Reduction Act. ICER is a independent organization that looks to really measure and evaluate the value that your drugs are bringing to a therapeutic disease space, right? If you consider a new product in an established category, for example, where there are already treatments available, then ICER will do comparisons or assess the full clinical evidence as well as the economic evidence to determine whether the drug is considered a value or not to the community.
Awesome. Okay, perfect. Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. So you named some of those challenges, the Inflation Reduction Act and what comes with that, and the how stringent Medicare is going to be, and different payers, and ensuring that your medication actually performs from a value perspective. Can you, in your opinion, what solutions or strategies could effectively address some of those challenges?
I think a few things. Honestly, the foremost thing right now is getting people to appreciate what this even means for different companies, right? So certainly bigger companies with a bigger portfolio are going to be more affected by something like the Inflation Reduction Act because frankly, they have the drugs that are what we'll consider blockbusters. That has a huge impact. Clearly there's a huge need for it because sales have been extremely high for some of these medicine in the Medicare space, right? And so having the internal organization have an appreciation of what this means, how it applies to our category, our our therapeutic area space, and then having what we'll just call like an internal governance to figure out, who are the right stakeholders that need to be a part of these conversations. Evidence is certainly a part of it, right? Medical affairs, clinical development, certainly a big part of it. But then you have the commercial side of it with regards to market access and how you want to negotiate some of these prices with Medicare, for example. So I'd say that's a huge piece of it, especially for a small biotech like us.
So the coordination amongst all those different functions, I know it has to be challenging. How do those conversations usually start? Not giving too much of the strategy that you guys are using specifically, but usually does the clinical side start and they put together information and then they meet with the commercial side? Who usually starts those conversations?
Yeah, definitely the market access leads, right? And I don't think that's a surprise. Part of market access, right, is looking at also policy changes, which is exactly what the Inflation Reduction Act is, right? And distilling it down to what are the implications of these policy changes and how does it affect our business, right? So the market access leads will typically coordinate that. Will typically shepherd up the important information and the key trends to leadership. But then when it comes time for if we are one of the ones who need to have that engagement with CMS, right, then we would need to pull in the right people. But market access would be shepherding that.
Thank you.
And then looking into the future, what are the most promising opportunities for growth and innovation in your field? Whether that be, I know you said your specialty was epilepsy, but even as a broad view of your field.
Yeah, definitely. Right. I can look at this beyond just my current therapeutic area. When we think of market access, I think that is a very important field as we continue to move into the future, right? I think there was maybe a time 20 years ago when access didn't matter as much, right? PBMs weren't the force that they are today. And I don't want to get into all the legislation around PBMs and whatnot, right? But the point is, like, there's a lot of life-saving medications available, right? And we certainly have to do a good job of trying to show the value for each of those medicine. The PBMs and the health plans' job is to make sure that not only do they curtail costs, but they make sure that the right medicine at the right price gets to the right patient, right? And so this is going to continue to grow. And so because of that, market access and understanding the access implications, policy implications affecting that will continue to grow. So I think there's a lot of growth there for anybody interested in moving into a more traditional market access role. I'll also say the same for health, HEOR, or health economics and outcomes research, right? I think there's clearly an ask, as I mentioned in my earlier part of this conversation, for real world evidence, right? There's actually quite a substantial amount of real world data available, and they're quite messy, as people can imagine. But it takes specific teams with expertise, even beyond myself, to really dig into those messy data and try to find a research objective and try to find a conclusion from some of this. And this is the research that post approval, post FDA approval, and whatnot, it really helps to not only firm up the value of that medicine in the real world today, but it helps with some of those negotiations that I just mentioned with CMS, as well as some other just your day-to-day payers, if you will.
Great. Thank you for your insight.